What's going on, everyone? Today is January 18th of 2024. Welcome back to this, the 66th edition of the Superstream. My name is Derek, coming to you from the frigid north. Before I get started, a big shout out to those who continue to support the website and the work I do. I can never thank you guys enough, even if you don't support but still use the calculator and maybe talk about it or share it with those you know. That's really all I can ask for, to help spread truth and enlightenment as we navigate the murky waters of planet Earth. We got about 7 news stories to talk about, a couple of them connected to one another. Actually, all of them sharing some theme, which I've been talking about a lot on this channel lately, which is the recent moon landing attempted by the United States. This was the first time that the U.S. sent a lunar lander since 1972. This was the Peregrine mission from Astrobotics that ultimately failed and isn't going to happen. And we'll be talking a lot about the moon landing throughout a lot of these stories, including the first story we'll talk about, which is the U.S. Department of Justice's report on the Uvalde school shooting at Robb Elementary back in 2022, and how this is connected to the total eclipse that passes over Uvalde, Texas, as well as a helicopter crash that occurred in 2018 that I never really talked about on this channel before, but turns out is synced up with that event. Now, this enlightenment that I was referring to earlier is the notion that our alphabet holds a hidden yet fairly simple code known as Gematria, which, when studied in accordance with the calendar, reveals a bevy of fascinating coincidences that transcend random chance, revealing that numerology and astrology may actually be very important. In fact, I would go so far as to say that Gematria helps show that our species may even be some form of superorganism with our perceived independent consciousness at least partially operating in lockstep with one another to provide destined experiences. So once again, my name is Derek, author and webmaster of Gematrinator.com, and today we'll be scoping out the blog on my website. As we do in the Superstream, we take a look at several recent major news stories, and today we'll go back a couple of weeks, talk about the deaths of some celebrities, including a player from the NFL, the New Orleans Saints, which is a team I talked about in a couple videos ago. And then we'll also talk about this death of Dejan Milojević. Excuse my pronunciation on his Serbian name, which is going to be terrible in this video. But a coach for the Golden State Warriors died yesterday at the age of 46. And as a result, this led to the postponement of their game against the Utah Jazz. Some very interesting numbers there. So once again, the language of Gematria is primarily through the base 4 methods, which are all based in the alphabetic order, A through Z, 1 through 26, with the reduction or Pythagorean ciphers using the rules of numerology to create single-digit numbers for the entire method. The standard cipher is what more closely mirrors ancient Hebrew Gematria and Greek isopsephy charts. Now, this cipher uses the current alphabetic order, but the numeric structure also applies to the Latin alphabetic order in a method called Agrippa's key, which, for the sake of simplicity, we call Latin Gematria. And again, when you look at the calendar, it turns out that there's something very, very strange going on in this world. And it appears as if our federal government is well aware of this, and they execute things in lockstep with this code quite regularly. In fact, I would say probably every day. So for starters, I want to look at this story from today. Back in 2022, we had this Uvalde school massacre shooting, and I didn't do a video on YouTube. It is on my BitChute channel, but there were some interesting things that I wanted to talk about and how this is connected to all of the recent moon landing stuff going on. A man who lived in Uvalde, Texas, after marrying his wife, who was a native of the city, was astronaut Pete Conrad, who flew aboard the Apollo 12 mission, which reportedly successfully sent men to the moon. So as a result, there's some strong moon landing connections here. Also, the most famous celebrity to be from the city of Uvalde, Texas, is Matthew McConaughey, a big-time Hollywood actor, born in Uvalde and was highly outspoken in the media in the aftermath of the shootings. Notice how McConaughey was born in 1969, the year of the first two moon landings. In fact, his November 4th birthday falls just 10 days before the launch of Apollo 12, which once again carried a resident of Uvalde to the moon. In the language of Gematria, using the reverse alphabetic order, Robb Elementary School sums to 313. This is the 65th prime number, and prime numbers are highly integral to numerology, as we will continue to see. In reduction, or Pythagorean, Robb Elementary equals 65, while in ordinal, Uvalde equals 65. Today's DOJ report was released a span of 605 days after the shooting at Robb Elementary. This was actually a number I mentioned after the shooting because Matthew McConaughey, on the date of that very shooting, was exactly 650 lunar phases old. A lunar phase is something I'll also be mentioning several times in this video. A lunar phase is also known as a synodic month, measuring the 29.5-day period between each new moon. Alternatively, we'll also look at sidereal months, which is a couple days less, and measures the lunar orbit around the Earth in relation to the stars. Back in the year 2018, I made this blog post about a news story from Uvalde, Texas. And in 2018, I was doing a high quantity of posts while the quality was quite low. But I found it interesting that this was the only other time I mentioned Uvalde in my blog before the shooting at the elementary school. It's not that big of a city, so this would stand to reason. But what I realized about this helicopter crash from 2018 is that this occurred on November 4th, which is the birthday of Uvalde native Matthew McConaughey. In fact, that crash happened on McConaughey's 49th birthday, and in the alphabetic order, crash sums to 49. Another prime number connection here, as Robb Elementary School sums to the 49th prime number in the alphabetic order, 227. In the alphabetic order, McConaughey's full name, Matthew David McConaughey, has a value of 245. Well, this is virtually identical to the date of the Robb Elementary shooting, the 24th of May, which can be written 24/5. Furthermore, helicopter crash equals 245 in reverse. But this is a number I've been mentioning recently a lot, as Skull and Bones Society sums to 245 in ordinal. And Uvalde, Texas, has the unique property of sitting within the path of two of the three solar eclipses that sweep over the United States over the past 7 years: the 2023 annular eclipse and the 2024 total solar eclipse. In fact, this shooting was just 10 days after a mass shooting at a grocery store in Buffalo, another city that sits directly in the path of the 2024 eclipse. This brings us back to Yale University and Skull and Bones, whose skull and crossbones logo mimics the cross that these eclipses create over the United States of America. Notice how Yale University recently turned 322 years old. 322, the number on the Skull and Bones emblem. And a graphic I've shown a lot, skull and crossbones equals 223 in ordinal. Again, the school turning 322 years old in 2023. So as a result, this shooting at Robb Elementary is very connected to this Skull and Bones code. And for one, when we look at these two eclipses, we find out that they are exactly 82 lunar phases apart, or a synodic month. Meanwhile, Yale University's special anniversary, turning 322, was exactly 82 sidereal months after that exact date. The number 82, very important to this code. Well, in Latin Gematria, Robb Elementary equals 820. And if you measure from today's release to the total eclipse that passes over Uvalde, Texas, it's a span of 82 days. Remember, in reverse Sumerian, the alphabetic order times 6, we learned that 82 is the first number with 666 Gematria. The two total eclipses, 6 years, 6 months, 6 days. 6 weeks and 6 days apart. That's what I get for typing and talking at the same time. So if you measure from that helicopter crash that happened on Matthew McConaughey's 49th birthday, crash 49, we get a span of 3 years, 202 days. And in the reverse order, Robb Elementary, summing to 223. Today's news is 101 days after Yale turned 322 years old. With the S exception of Gematria, another significant method which is identical to reduction, but instead the letter S, which is the 19th letter, 1 plus 9 is 10. This is only reduced once. Skull and Bones Society sums to 101. Robb Elementary School sums to 101. Matthew David McConaughey, 101. Now, why else is this number 101 important? Well, ever since the year 1923, we've been counting the Brown lunation number. Enthusiast members and up on my website have access to this Brown lunation number right there on the calculator. And notice how this began on January 17th of 1923. That means the Brown lunation number turned 101 years old yesterday. With reverse capital letters, the word moon equals 101. And real quickly, just the capital letter ciphers. I try not to include these too often. However, they are relevant, and they are based in the alphabetic order. These methods can also be reversed. Now, if you look at the Brown lunation number for May 24th of 2022, this shooting, you get lunation 1229. Well, in Latin Gematria, Skull and Bones Society equals 1229. And again, it was on the date, the 24th of May, which is the ordinal value of Skull and Bones Society. So this is the second video in a row that I mentioned a school shooting riddle connected to the moon landing. My last video talked about the Parkland shooting in Florida, the one back in 2018 at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, how that was synced up with the Packers Super Bowl and JFK, as well as the moon landing. In the alphabetic order, moon landing equals 118, and today is January 18th, or 118. The United States Department of Justice, founded way back in 1870, is also 8,011 weeks old. Skull and Bones, also known as the Brotherhood of Death, 118, a number of death and homicide in Latin. But notice in Latin Gematria, the word moon has a value of 170 and 17. And this is where it gets really interesting, because if you measure from the Uvalde shooting to Yale's Skull and Bones, their special 322nd anniversary, it's exactly 17 moons. That's also 71 weeks. And now the Department of Justice gets involved. Look at the Department of Justice founding date, July 1st, written 1-7 or 7-1. On the date of the shooting at Robb Elementary, That was a date with primary numerology of 71, 5 plus 24 plus 20 plus 22. School shooting equals 71 in reduction, and in reverse, Rob is 71. What about Apollo? The word Apollo equals 71. But notice how Apollo also equals 201. Now, this is really interesting because, again, the shooting happened under Brown Lunation 1229. And 1229 is an important prime number. The 201st prime. Connecting to Apollo. The shooting at Uvalde was 201 days after Matthew McConaughey's birthday. Today's news is 201 days after the Justice Department's anniversary. 201, also a number connected to Skull and Bones with capital letters. Notice how Matthew McConaughey adorably has matching 283 gematria with the moon. Something else that stands out about this is that 17 lunar phases, and again, we're talking about how moon equals 170. Well, this is also 503 days. And I mentioned this number recently because NASA sent this Peregrine mission to the moon. Well, a Peregrine is a falcon. And the Falcons lost their 503rd game all time just before this attempted moon landing was launched. And that moon landing launch went up on a date with 53 numerology. And I thought, wow, what are the odds? So, yeah, 503, we see this again. Next up, we're going to talk about the death of Serbian coach Dejan Milojević for the Golden State Warriors. I'm going to stick with Milojević. That's a very American pronunciation, but I'm proud of my country. Now, what made this stand out is that Milojević was a coach for the Warriors, and previously, he was a coach in his native Serbia. And while he was in Serbia, NBA superstar Nikola Jokic played under his tutelage. And just 2 weeks ago, I made a blog post about Nikola Jokic scoring a buzzer beater at half court to beat the Warriors. And this happened on January 4th, the same day as the plane crash that happened in Japan. And we'll talk more about this next. But how interesting that I made this post, and then 13 days later, we get the death of his former Serbian coach, who coached for the same team he defeated in that game. Milojević died 13 days after Jokic's heroics out there in Golden State. Notice how the phrases human sacrifice and ritual human sacrifice sum to 130 and 103. The number 13 has reverse gematria of 117. And Milojević died on January 17th, one day after collapsing. The date written 117. 117 is also the reverse value of Golden State Warriors in reduction. But there's more about this number 13, because in Latin, it has matching 347 gematria with one of the major Hebrew words for sacrifice, 347. And today, one day after his former coach's death, Jokic turned 347 months old. So a bevy of connections to the number 13, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. The Warriors, of course, play their home games in San Francisco. And San Francisco is the land of the 415, as this is the area code in the city. It's also the city's anniversary. 415 is also the average of San Francisco's gematria. Well, April 15th is also Milojevic's birthday. Now, his birthday can also be written as 15/4, as it would be in his native Serbia. The number 154 is 77 plus 77, and he was born in the year 77. But this number 154 is also the reduction value of Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is the long-form name of the Mormon Church, which is based in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is where Milojević died. The Warriors were in town as they were playing the Jazz that night, or supposed to. However, that game scheduled for yesterday got postponed. Of course, the phrase ritual sacrifice equals 154. The Jesuit order, fond of this number, founded in the year 1540. But how interesting that when you measure from the founding date of the Mormon Church to the death of Milojević, you get 53,700 days, whereas Golden State Warriors sums to 537. Salt Lake City, Utah has matching 199 Gematria with the church's full name. And this is actually important because it's the 46th prime number. And 4/6, or April 6th, is the founding date of the church. 46, the age at which Milojević passed away yesterday. 46, also, the reduction value of sacrifice, along with 62. And the date of his passing had primary numerology of 62. The Serbian's death fell 219 days after Nikola Jokic led the Nuggets to their first ever NBA championship, where he won the MVP award last year in 2023. That stands out because 219 is Jokic's birthday, February 19th, 219. In fact, measuring from the Mormons' founding to Jokic's birth gives us another 219 in the measurement. Now, it's also being widely reported that he had suffered a heart attack. And notice how heart attack has matching 409 Gematria with Mormonism. On top of that, heart attack sums to 108, like Belgrade, Serbia, which is where he was born. Serbia on its own, a 108. Golden State Warriors, 108 with the S exception. 108, another significant number to the geometry of the Earth, Moon, and Sun. Full moon and geometry, both with double 108s. But next up, I want to talk about this sacrifice code that appears to be connected to the upcoming total eclipse that sweeps over the United States. Milojević collapsed on January 16th, which is written as 116. Nikola Jokic was born on a date with numerology of 116. The date of his death was 11 weeks and 6 days before the next total solar eclipse. In fact, his collapse on January 16th, 11 weeks and 6 days. And then when he died, if you include the end date, you also get 11/6. Now, this is, of course, an upside-down 9/11. Milojević died 9 months and 11 days after the anniversary of the Mormon Church. In Satanic Gematria, a cipher mostly constructed around the number 666, the phrase ritual human sacrifice sums to 911. 911 is the 156th prime number. Think about how plane and twin towers both equal 156, an event that happened on 9/11. Again, next up, we're going to talk about how this buzzer beater over San Francisco in Golden State was connected to the plane crash, as a similar plane crash occurred in San Francisco back in 2013. The number 156 is also a big-time eclipse number because eclipses always occur 1, 5, or 6 lunar phases apart. Well, check out Jokic's age when his former coach died. 10,560 days old. The numbers 28 and 33 both have ordinal gematria of 156. Well, not only is Jokic 28 years old, but he was also 33 days before his next birthday yesterday. 33, another big-time eclipse number. So 156 is the Hebrew value for the word used for eclipse. In Greek isopsephy, this value is 778. And I point this out a lot because Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak, has a Greek isopsephy value of 1778. And he was born in 1994. Total solar eclipse, 994. He was born on the 6th of December, and Revelation 6:12 talks about eclipses. But back to Milojević. Check out how old he was when he died. 17,078 days old. On top of that, his death was also 70,778 days after the Mormon Church was founded. In standard gematria, eclipse equals 222. Well, notice how he died 2 months and 22 days before the total eclipse over the United States. The word basketball equals 22. The Warriors had to cancel their game against the Jazz, who are currently 22-20. And when the Warriors won the NBA Finals with Milojević on the staff, that was the year 2022. And notice how Milojević was born 220 lunar phases and 22 days before Nikola Jokic. Total solar eclipse and ritual human sacrifice, both with that 202 value as well. Finally, what about this? The Golden State Warriors are currently 83 and 115 against the Jazz all time, going back to the founding of both teams. And this is their regular season record, 83 and 115. So why is that interesting? Well, if you measure from Milojevic's death to the eclipse, you get 11 weeks and 5 days, or a span of 83 days with the end date included. When he was born on April 15th of 1977, it was a date with 115 numerology. Notice how the word killing has double gematria of 115. With exceptions applied, total eclipse equals 115. And in Hebrew, total eclipse and solar eclipse both equal 83, like moon with capital letters. The word murder also 83. I hate to suggest that this man was poisoned. We know that a lot can go wrong with the type of lifestyle that a lot of these guys live on the road and, eating out all the time. I'm not one to speculate. But the numerology is always fascinating nonetheless. And when you double in the eclipse code with the Mormon Church and their numerology, things just get weird. So on the topic of our Serbian superstar, Nikola Jokic, let's talk about this buzzer beater that he had against his former coach just 2 weeks ago. Now, back on the 5th or 6th it was, January 4th actually, I did a video on this plane crash that occurred at an airport in Tokyo. This was Japan Airlines Flight 516, and I talked about the number 516 quite a bit. This was 516 days after a lightning bolt at the White House. There was a lot more that went into it. I encourage you to check the video out. But I thought something was really interesting because, back in 2013, I believe it was, there was a very similar plane crash when Asiana Airlines Flight 214 crashed in the city of San Francisco, where the Warriors play their home games. I don't know if you guys remember this crash, but The airplane came in for a landing, and it hit the seawall right before the runway, and it skidded to its ultimate demise where it burned up. And I think 3 people died in this crash, 2 on impact, and then another one was hit by a fire truck or something really tragic. And this bore great similarity to the plane crash that happened a couple weeks ago at Haneda Airport, where the plane made contact with a Coast Guard aircraft as it was landing, and then it skidded to its demise and burned up. Now, the only fatalities in this incident occurred in the Coast Guard plane. Everybody aboard this craft somehow survived. I mean, look at this. That's I don't want to use the word miracle loosely, but we used to see so many tragedies at such great scale with airplanes, but to see something like this is nice, I suppose. I mean, not the charred airplane, but the fact that everyone lived is great. So I thought there's got to be a connection here because, Golden State, right? Golden ratio. I even did a video talking about the Warriors and the golden ratio in their 2015 championship. Well, notice how golden ratio has gematria of 516, which is the number of the flight that crashed a couple of weeks ago. Now, the golden ratio is 1.618. And with their loss to the Nuggets and this buzzer beater, the Warriors dropped to a record of 16-18, the first 4 digits of the golden ratio. Notice how the word golden equals 105 in reverse. The city of San Francisco was incorporated on the 105th day of the year. This is a number that Nikola Jokic has worn his entire career, the number 15 for the Nuggets. And in the year 15, that's when the Golden State Warriors completed their ultimate golden ratio riddle. I got this video on my channel. You can search it. The 15th prime number is 47, and Nikola Jokic equals 47. His buzzer beater was 47 days before his next birthday. The plane crash a couple days earlier was on a date with 47 numerology. That crash was also 47 days before Asiana Airlines anniversary. That's the company associated with the crash in San Francisco. And the 47 stood out for another reason, because that was the number on the clock when this collision in Tokyo occurred. We even had a Star Wars plane right in front of it. Star Wars equals 47. So back to the number 15. The 15th triangular number is 120. In the alphabetic order, golden ratio equals 120. The coach of the Warriors, Steve Kerr, equals 120. And he was even born on a date with numerology of 120. The runway collision in Tokyo happened on 102 or 21. Runway equals 102. Runway collision equals 210. 210 is also a number associated with San Francisco, California, which equals 210 in ordinal. Also the 102 and 120. Jokic has this 21 and 102, so does Joker, his nickname. Asiana Airlines 102 and Denver 120. Well, when Jokic won this game, it was 102 days before San Francisco's 174th anniversary. San Francisco equals 174. So it's strange, right? There's a lot of buzzer beaters in the NBA, but I almost never do a post on them. However, I picked up on patterns with this one, and then just a couple weeks later, this guy's former Serbian coach who plays or coached for the Warriors passes away. It's just wild. Jokic has more strong connections to the city of San Francisco. He was born on the 50th day of the year, like San Francisco in reduction. When he won the Finals MVP, it was on the date leaving 202 days of the year, like San Francisco. He won the Finals on June 12th, or 6/12. The word runway equals 6/12. And these digits are also found in San Francisco, California, runway collision, and September 11th. 12/6, like the 12th of June. The 2013 crash in San Francisco happened on July 6th, or 7-6. San Francisco, the Denver Nuggets, and Joker all equals 76. That's also the 187th day of the year. Nikola Jokic and Denver sum to 187. Notice how the Serbian who plays for Denver was born on a date with numerology of 135 and 45. Those are numbers connected to the Golden Gate Bridge, which equals 135. Golden Gate with double gematria of 45. In fact, when the Golden Gate Bridge opened, San Francisco was 4,545 weeks old. The Denver Nuggets equals 1164, just like September 11th and 2001 in Sumerian. The crash in Tokyo was exactly 1,164 weeks after 9/11. And again, Jokic with the upside-down 9/11 in his birth numerology. That crash in San Francisco was 119 months before they won the NBA championship last year. Speaking of plane crashes, there was actually a string of news stories over the course of about a week or two of multiple plane crashes. And even to this day, Boeing is still in the news about its door plugs and whether enough is being done to secure our safety in the skies after the incident that occurred to the Japan Airlines craft. Well, a Hollywood actor named Christian Oliver recently passed away. And notice how he died on January 4th. Now, January 4th was the same date as that buzzer beater in Golden State that was synced up with the plane crash in San Francisco in 2013. So already we see a remarkable coincidence here. But we're going to look at the numbers and unveil a much deeper riddle. And it's all connected to his birth name, Christian Klepser. Furthermore, his first name, Christian, speaks to a great riddle connected to the crucifixion code. Now, the number 516 had a lot of connections in my video, but what I want to point out is that the name Klepser sums to 516, dying in a plane crash 2 days after Flight 516 goes down. In Satanic Gematria, the word crucifixion sums to 516. And the gematria of this word is going to bring everything together. We start with the fact that Christian Oliver has gematria of 223 in reverse. Again, this is the ordinal value of skull and crossbones with the 322. Skull and crossbones, Brotherhood of Death, and Death all have gematria of 97. Christian Oliver sums to 97. So does his birth name, Christian Klepser, both 97. In fact, his birthday, March 3rd of 72, this has primary numerology of 97. The plane crash in Tokyo was 97 days before the total eclipse over the United States. And in the alphabetic order, the phrase plane crash sums to 97. If we also crack open ordinal gematria, Latin, we see that plane crash equals 308. Oliver died 308 days after his 51st birthday. Both grenadines and crucifix sum to 51. Grenadines, where he was when he died. But I point out the gematria of crucifix because the name Christian Klepser, his birth name, sums to 610, just like crucifix in Latin. His 790 standard value also syncs up with crucifixion 709 Latin. Of course, it's widely believed that the crucifixion of Jesus Christ occurred in the year 33, at the age of 33. Crucifixion of Jesus Christ, just like Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. 303 in the alphabetic order. And this brings us back to Oliver's March 3rd birthday, the date written 303, which also leaves 303 days on the calendar. The number 33 is, of course, shorthand for 666. And that's another significant number to Jesus, the Son of God. The Son's magic square has a total sum of 666. And the number 666, when you actually spell it out as it's spelled, the cardinal spelling, sums to 275, which is very similar to the 1275 value of Jesus Christ. Well, on the date of his death, Christian Oliver was a span of exactly 2,705 weeks old, and with reverse capital letters, Christian Oliver equals 275. Another important number to Jesus is 11, as this is the reduction and Fibonacci value of the name Jesus. Furthermore, Christian and Christian Klepser both sum to 101. The date he died had numerology of 11 and 29, whereas 29 is the value of Jesus, Christ in Latin, and Jesus Christ with reverse caps, all 290. In my opinion, this is an important reason why Donald Trump is so famous, as he was born during a lunar eclipse from lunation 290. And in Latin Gematria, the name Donald Trump is the reverse of Jesus, 589 to 985. In fact, using reverse Gematria, we can even find Trump's birthday, the 14th of June, 14/6, in the name Jesus Christ. The name Klepser sums to 103 in reverse, and this is another number connected to the code as JC in ordinal, the 10th letter and the 3rd letter, 10-3. He died on a date with 13 numerology, which was also January 4th, or 1-4. Well, notice how JC also equals 14. The date can also be written as 4-1, and JC equals 41 in reverse, the 4th of January. And then in reduction, Jesus Christ equals the 14th prime number. The phrase plane crash, also 43, just like Jesus Christ. Christ also with that 41. So many strong connections here. And, you know, of course you would expect this with an actor named Christian. It's just strange to me that more people don't know about what's going on with the strong symbolism and numerology we see. It's just so blatantly obvious. Like, I almost feel silly talking about it. You know what I mean? Like, I do a lot of these videos, and I feel like I'm spouting the same numbers over and over sometimes, and I am. But it's just for the sake of, you know, proof that something very bizarre is happening with what we're seeing play out. What exactly that is, I'm not sure. I have a very strong inkling that it's spiritual in nature, and that we truly are witnessing biblical times play out. And maybe we're always in biblical times, but it really seems like now more so than ever. Speaking of this Christ code, notice how Christ equals 32. I think last month I did a video on the death of Pedro Henrique, a Brazilian gospel singer who died while on stage, and he died at, I think he was 32 years old. No, but he died in Brazil, which sums to 32. Christ 32, Brazil 32, and yeah, he died on a date with 32 numerology. So anyway, we see another death at the age of 32 with former NFL player Ronald Powell, who, after a career with the Florida Gators in college, he was drafted by the New Orleans Saints, where he spent his one and only NFL season. And we're going to glance at a couple of these dates, the start and end of his career in this decode. Now, what's noteworthy is that, I talked about the Saints a couple of videos ago because the Atlanta Falcons gave up 48 points in their last game of the season, and they did it to the New Orleans Saints. And then we had the Peregrine Falcon mission right after that game. Well, then the Packers scored 48 points, the first time they've done it in the playoffs since they did it against Atlanta. So now we get the death of a Saints player, which is noteworthy for another reason, because I mentioned the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I suppose, just a couple of decodes ago. So now, notice how New Orleans Saints sums to 224 in reverse. Here we are opening up the year 2024 with riddles connected to the team. And check this out. Powell was a former linebacker for the team. Linebacker sums to 175, and when he passed away, he was a span of exactly 1,705 weeks old. In that same Latin method, the name Ronald Powell equals 1,250. And the date he died, what was it, the 15th? This happened during Brown Lunation 1250, matching his Latin Gematria. In a cipher in Gematria that's actually acknowledged by sources as mainstream as Wikipedia is nowadays, the word sacrifice sums to 125. There's more connections to the moon here, as this player went to Florida, which matches moon. Then he played for New Orleans, which matches the moon and moon. Now, the New Orleans Saints have only ever won one Super Bowl, and that was Super Bowl 44. And probably for good reason, as the number 44 has matching gematria with the city of New Orleans. 144, 54, and 45. Notice how Powell died, he was 6,844 days old for Super Bowl 44. The word kill equals 44 and 64. The word linebacker equals 44 and 64, and this linebacker played for the Florida Gators and New Orleans Saints, which both equals 64. Saints also 44 reverse reduction. So he died 5,090 days after Super Bowl 44. And this is interesting because the Saints have lost 59 regular season games since that date. 59 is the 17th prime number, and the word kill equals 59 and 17. Powell died 3,417 days after his first NFL game, and the number 34 is found in the gematria of murder. The word murder has matching ordinal and reverse gematria with Powell. His former team, the Saints, equals 115. This is like the date he died. 115, January 15th. And again, killing with that double 115. News of his death was published on January 16th, or 116, which is another upside-down 9/11. We talked about this earlier. Notice how he played his first NFL game 116 days after his birthday. His death fell 116 months after he was drafted into the league. It was also 20,895 days after the founding of the New Orleans Saints. 895 is the Latin value of ritual human sacrifice. The phrase ritual sacrifice is 616. Well, his death was 9 years and 19 days after his last NFL game. That's also exactly 121 sidereal months. Blood sacrifice 121. And not only did he die 121 days after the NFL's anniversary, but it was also 121 days before his own birthday. Finally, ritual sacrifice equals 82. This is a number that both teams he played for share. Gators and Saints, both 82. And it turns out he died a span of 8 months and 2 days after his birthday. Another death connected to the NFL, as following a Week 18 game between the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins, one Dolphins fan took the loss a little harder than he should have and wound up murdering a fan of the other team. I tell you what, you European soccer fans, or, football, whatever you want to call it, you ain't got nothing on us. All right? It's cool that you got flares going off, different color, different smoke bombs permeating throughout the stadium. Well, we're killing motherfuckers out here. You understand? Now, let's talk about this, because there's some very interesting numerology with the Miami Dolphins and this game. Particularly, the number 399. Miami's loss against the Bills in the final week of the regular season gave them their 399th loss in franchise history. Now, this is a number I mentioned a couple videos ago, because after Brett Favre's dad died, he had that epic game against the Oakland Raiders on Monday Night Football. Well, in that game, he threw for 399 yards. In Latin Gematria, the word murder equals 399. This was also the 6th loss for the Dolphins this year. And in Latin Gematria, the number 6 equals 399. Intriguingly, this was also the 6th time that the Dolphins have made the playoffs since the retirement of Dan Marino. Now, we'll talk more about Dan Marino as this decode goes on, because his numerology is integral to Miami, and the number 13, which we'll look at more in a little bit. So, what really sent me to make a post on this story is that not only does number 6 share this 399 gematria, but the man who died was from Six Nations, Ontario. A native from Six Nations. What are the odds, right? You think about the number 399. Well, 3 nines is 999. The victim in this story, Dylan Isaacs, sums to 999 in standard gematria. This is a lot like Miami, 99 in standard. Now, we're also going to talk a little bit here about Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel. And this is an interesting character as of late, because Mike McDaniel is the only football coach I've ever known of to have graduated from Yale University. NFL coach, to be specific. And of course, Yale University has been all the rage, as we've been discussing, right? The big skull and crossbones year, 2023. And it does appear that this death is connected to the Skull and Bones Code, as this occurred in Miami. Notice how the name Mike McDaniel sums to 99. Dan Marino retired after the 99 season. Marino led the Dolphins to the playoffs in 10 of their 17 seasons. And notice how 13 equals 99 and 117, right? 10 of his 17 seasons they went to the playoffs. So you have Daniel Marino, and now you got Mike McDaniel. Well, Daniel equals 99 and 117, just like the number 13. And think about this, right? The city of Miami, starting with the letter M, the 13th letter. Mike McDaniel is the 13th head coach in Miami Dolphins history. So the number 999 is an upside down 666, and this connects to the number 18, which is the sum of 6 plus 6 plus 6. This game ended week 18 in the NFL, and it's very likely this shooting happened after midnight, which means the calendar had flipped to January 8th, or 108. The name of the victim, Dylan Isaacs, equals 108. And when you look at the date that the Miami Dolphins were established, notice how it was a date with 108 numerology. So we've established a strong connection with Miami, 13, and the Dolphins. Well, notice how the Dolphins sums to 130 in ordinal. This man was shot and killed 10 months and 3 days after the birthday of Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel. He also died exactly 13 weeks after Yale's special anniversary. His death was also exactly 13 weeks before the next Great American Solar Eclipse, with the ampersand, skull, and bones matching 130 Gematria with human sacrifice. So we talked about this earlier, 13 summing to 347 in Latin Gematria. The Dolphins' home stadium, Hard Rock Stadium, has an address of 347. Remember sacrifice 347. As I mentioned earlier, Nikola Jokic, 347 months old today, the day after his former coach died. Well, on the date that Dylan Isaacs died in the Dolphins parking lot, the Miami Dolphins franchise, measuring from this date we looked at earlier, is exactly 3,047 weeks old. You also get a 329 in the age, like ritual human sacrifice equals 329 reverse. This phrase also equals 94 in reduction. Well, the Buffalo Bills won their 491st game all time in Miami that night. That's the 94th prime number. And this game was played when Mike McDaniel was 490 months and 1 day old. Furthermore, the Dolphins finished their season with that 11-6 record. And this was the 116th matchup between those two teams. Blood Sacrifice 6-11, Ritual Human Sacrifice 9-11, Miami 116. Again, the same numbers through multiple stories about death over and over again. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, but I wonder what those people would say about saying the same thing over and over and somehow expecting even more people to understand. But I know many of you do, to some degree anyway. You know, I wouldn't make these videos if the numerology didn't blow me out of the water. I only share stuff that I find to be really fascinating with this consistent code of Gematria in the calendar. All right, so we're about an hour into the super stream today. Special shout out to everyone who made it through the whole video. Much love and, you know, happy birthday to whoever's celebrating that tomorrow in the chat. Again, one more thing I want to touch on, and this will be the death of actor Adan Canto. And Adan Canto passed away last week after a battle with appendix cancer at the young age of 42. Adan Canto was best known for, I suppose, two roles. Now, you might be able to argue that there were other more significant roles than the cleaning lady, but let me explain why I'll be measuring to these two. First of all, the cleaning lady is listed here in the headline, and this was a show that he played a main character on. And this was a show that's also still airing. In fact, the show just began a little over 2 years ago. Also, Canto starred in the movie X-Men Days of Future Past from 2014. And of course, this is a major high-budget Marvel film, so a lot of significance here. We begin with the number 53, as the name Adan Canto equals 53 in reverse reduction, and in ordinal, Canto sums to 53 as well. His death on January 8th had primary numerology of 53. In reduction, cleaning lady, 53. But here we go with the number 13 again. On the show The Cleaning Lady, Canto played a character named Armin Morales, which in ordinal sums to 130. The show The Cleaning Lady takes place, as it's pictured here, in the city of Las Vegas, which in the reverse alphabetic order equals 130. This year, Las Vegas will be hosting its first ever Super Bowl. Canto died 1 month, 3 days before the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, and 1 month and 3 days after his own birthday. Skull and Bones and Human Sacrifice, again, both summing to 130. This guy died on the same date as that Bills fan, meaning it was also 13 weeks after Yale's anniversary and 13 weeks before the eclipse. Notice how both Sun and Moon and total eclipse have ordinal values of 130. And why is the eclipse code so significant here? Why am I talking about this in Skull and Bones in relation to this man's death? Well, in the Marvel film, Canto played a character named Sunspot. And certainly, one great time to spot the sun is during a total eclipse. So this should go without saying that there's going to be a riddle connected to the sun here. If you measure from the wide release date of this film where he played Sunspot on May 23rd or 5/23 to the date of his death, you get 502 weeks and 3 days. So the date of the release reflected in the measurement. The number 523 is the 99th prime number. Now, this eclipse on April 8th, coming up in a couple of months. I can't believe it's happening already. I've been talking about it for so damn long on this channel. Lambda 115 just did a video on Donald Trump's age, on his age on the date of the eclipse. And it's just strange because you get basically the same days in the date 4/8/2024, 4/8/224, all in his age. Trump, the eclipse boy with the Jesus numbers. But this is about Adan Canto. And I just wanted to point out this eclipse on April 8th falls on the 99th day of a leap year. The United States of America sums to 99 in reduction. And remember, America with the 13 colonies upon its founding. America equals 99 with capital letters as well. This brings us back to the number 13, which equals 99 and 117. Adan Canto had primary birth numerology of 117. When Sunspot first made his comic book debut in an issue called The New Mutants, which came out on September 7th of 1982, and I did have to do a lot of research to find this. I don't want to be confused with some comic book nerd. I'm a numbers nerd, all right? It's going to stay that way. Much love to my comic book fans out there, though. I was friends with a lot of you guys growing up. So that issue, which Sunspot debuted in, came out on a date with 117 numerology, right? And in Latin ordinal, Sunspot equals 117. But in English ordinal, Sunspot equals 124, and Adan died 124 days after September 7th, which was Sunspot's debut. Also interesting that Sunspot's real name is Roberto da Costa, which sums to 616, just like ritual sacrifice. Speaking of sacrifice, the name Adan Canto has matching 73 and 170 Gematria with sacrifice. The X-Men film he starred in came out 170 days after his own birthday. His birthday had 17 numerology, just like his name Canto equals 17 in reduction. That movie also came out on a date with 17 numerology. The word kill equals 17. And his last full day alive was January 7th, or 1/7, and then he died on a date with numerology of 17. Notice how he died exactly 105 weeks after the debut of The Cleaning Lady, where he had a starring role. And this is the value of X-Men Days of Future Past, 105. His name Canto, also 105. His death on 108 also matches his 108 gematria with Canto. Finally, The Cleaning Lady equals 140 in ordinal. The Cleaning Lady premiered exactly 1 year and 40 weeks before Yale turned 322 years old. Skull and Bones with the ampersand sums to 140. And Yale's anniversary was also 140 days after X-Men's release. So, some interesting alignments. Nothing too crazy here, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a bonus decode that I didn't talk about because I want to touch a little bit more on this Skull and Bones riddle. And we're going to talk about one of my old heroes. You know, growing up, for a good year of my life, I played poker for my soul and source of income. And what really helped out was Super System 2 from Doyle Brunson, arguably the greatest poker player of all time. Now, I actually did a video on Doyle Brunson during one of my super streams, but I'll admit my decode on Doyle Brunson was not that great. It lacked an overall riddle that kind of brought everything together. Now, yesterday, I was perusing the news and noticed this story about a cloned rhesus monkey named Retro. And I thought maybe this is connected to Dolly the sheep, who was the original cloned animal back in 1996. But when I came to this page, I was like, wait a minute, Dolly. Doyle Brunson's nickname was Texas Dolly. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if there was a strong connection between the death of Dolly the sheep and Texas Dolly? So I pumped in a couple numbers on the calculator, and within about a minute, I had my blog open starting a new post. So first of all, I want to point out that poker has matching 245 gematria with the name Doyle Frank Brunson, 245 in reverse. Doyle Brunson's birthday also has primary numerology of 70. And when you write out poker, it equals 70 in reverse. So this guy, arguably, destined to play and win at poker. So here's what I found. Doyle Brunson died on May 14th of 2023, which, measuring to the birth of the first ever cloned animal, Dolly the sheep, he died a span of exactly 9,810 days after Dolly was born. In Latin gematria, Doyle Brunson equals 981. If you instead measure to the death of Dolly the sheep, which, notice, was also on the 14th day of the month, just like old Dolly here, Texas Dolly. Well, their deaths were exactly 243 months apart. And in Satanic Gematria, Dolly equals 243. The sheep died on February 14th, or 214. The name Doyle Frank Brunson sums to 214 ordinal. The sheep died in the year 2003, whereas Doyle Brunson died in the year 23. Dolly equals 23 reduction, so does clone. And if you measure between their deaths, you get exactly 20 years and 3 months. 203 is also the phone dialing code for the city of New Haven, Connecticut. Area code 203 for New Haven. This is the city that Yale University is located in. More on Yale in a second. But first, I point out that not only did Doyle Brunson die 89 days after the anniversary of Dolly the sheep, but he also died 89 days before his own birthday. And Doyle Brunson was 89 years old. In Satanic Gematria, Doyle Frank Brunson equals 809. And when he died, it was 9,809 days after the sheep was born. That sheep was cloned at the Roslin Institute, which equals 89. Now, a wise man once told me that brevity is clarity, and I should probably stop the post there, but let's keep going. The word clone matches Brunson in reverse, 86. Cloning equals 74, so does animal cloning. But notice how animal cloning has matching 61 and 74 gematria with the name Doyle. Doyle Brunson also 61. Brunson died 2 months and 27 days before his birthday, and in reverse, animal cloning equals 227. Who is writing this ridiculous script? In ordinal, animal clone sums to 99. This animal was cloned during Brown lunation number 909 in the year 96. In Latin gematria, Texas Dolly equals 990. Dolly the sheep equals 609. Cloning equals 690. Doyle Brunson 960 and Poker 96. Again, Dolly the sheep cloned in the year 96. This brings us to Yale University, whose anniversary in the year 96 fell 96 days after Dolly the sheep was born. And when Yale University turned 322 years old last year, that was exactly 90 years and 60 days after Doyle Brunson was born. Doyle Brunson died 322 months after Dolly the sheep was born. And again, he died in 2023. Whereas Dolly the sheep died in the second month of 2003 for another 223. The 322nd day of the year is November 18th or 1118. In Latin gematria, Doyle Frank Brunson equals 1118. A lot like clone 118. Remember, death and homicide, both 118. Yale University has a Latin motto, Lux et Veritas, truth and light. Well, in the Latin cipher, Yale equals 426. Doyle Brunson died 4 months and 26 days before Yale's special anniversary. That's also 149 days. In the alphabetic order, skull and bones equals 149. By the way, 1409 is also the 223rd prime number. And when you write out the numbers 223 or 322, you get matching 295 gematria with both Skull and Bones Society and Skull and Bones. Well, Doyle Brunson was born in 1933, and 1933 is appropriately the 295th prime number. Doyle Brunson died on a date with 62 numerology. Yale celebrated its anniversary on another 62 date. Doyle Brunson was even 62 years old when Dolly the sheep was born. This is a big sacrifice number, 62. And again, Yale University matching 70 gematria with Poker, like Doyle's birth numerology, and they share a lot more numbers as well. So if you had ever told me as a young child that my life would be comparing the numbers between a sheep and a man with the same name, I might not have ever made it. No, I mean, it really is ridiculous. This geometric masterpiece that we live in, it really boggles my mind. And again, I wouldn't continue to do this work if it didn't continue to blow me away. But we're living through this machine. These gears seem to come in contact with each other and so often, and we get these events that alter our perception of where we are and what we're doing here. Maybe I'm being a little melodramatic about it, but it's just so out there. But the truth is out there. In fact, it may be further out there than most people understand. But hopefully, the Gematria calculator, the date calculator, can bring that truth a little bit closer to us. All right, guys, there's always more. I'm going to go ahead and cut the video off there. As always, check the description below for more links if you want to find out more or help support the work, which will continue to keep Gematrinator online. It'll continue to keep these videos going. Also, some work in the future this year. I'm going to start writing my book soon, which will explain in depth the ciphers I use, how it relates to the Eclipse code, the Jesus riddles we see that are so repetitive, and that I think, other people will help understand the code to a point where they can also do the decodes to the level that I think is most digestible. Now, how we go about that's a topic for another video. But we'll be opening Gematrinator up to more lessons and more of the educational side of things in the near future. So more info on that coming up soon. Once again, that'll do it for this video. Peace, love, and all of God's blessings to everyone who made it through to the end. We'll talk to you guys next time. See ya.